Join us on the line now, as he does every Friday at this time, for our regular conversation. Bret Baier, the host of Special Report on your Fox News channel. Bret, good morning.
Good morning.
All right, so here's what the president said last night, talking to Chuck Todd over at NBC.
I am sorry that they are finding themselves in this situation based on assurances they got from me.
All right, so that was the president's apology. The president, all the headlines, president says he is sorry. It's being reported widely that the president has apologized. Now, Bret, you know me pretty well. You know that in my life, from time to time, I'm a man who's had to offer an apology or two, and I recognize what an apology is. I've made many apologies in my day, and probably will make a bunch more before I pass from this earth. I don't recognize that as an apology.
Yeah, it's interesing, the phrasing. Good morning, guys.
Good morning, Bret. I'm sorry. He just caught me by surprise with that framing there.
Yeah, the apologies.
Yeah.
I agree with you, Brian. I think that there is, each person looks at an apology different. Clearly, he said he was sorry that people have lost their insurance. But he went on to say that he knows that the administration and he could have been clearer. Well, yes, clearer would have been, true if you had laid out all of the caveats that they're laying out now to, you can keep your plan.
Yeah, and I mean, you're basically what you're saying, Bret Baier, is that by saying we could have been clearer, many people would interpret that as we could have been more truthful. We could have actually laid it out the way it was instead of selling it in a way that was politically advantageous at the time, because we know a lot of people wouldn't have voted for it if they had known the truth.
Yeah, listen, people are just so tired, I think, of politicians and lawmakers, not only in Washington but around the country, and where they kind of parse the language.
Yeah.
And it's not just plain spoken, tell me like it is. You don't come back 5 times later to rework the phrasing. The other night when the president was giving a speech, you could see him looking down at the paper because they wanted to be certain that he said it the right way. On the phrasing, I think you can keep your plan. I think that's really hurting. Senate Democrats who met at the White House the other day, there's a real concern in that caucus about where this is headed. I mean, today the president goes to New Orleans, the port of New Orleans, and traveling with him on Air Force One is Senator Mary Landrieu from Louisiana, up for re-election next year, but she will not be at the event.
Oh.
She will not be at the event. She said her staff said
there you go.
Pre-scheduled event in St. Charles.
But let's just talk about this apology thing, though, for a minute. Just a bit more, Bret, if I could. I mean, look, Americans are forgiving people. And when somebody offers a sincere apology, I made a mistake, I screwed up, I'm responsible for this, I'm deeply sorry, and I'm going to work to make it better. Generally, I find that no matter how egregious the offense, many people in America will say, all right, that comes across to me as being sincere. This doesn't have that same feel to it. Yeah,
I think that a lot of people are going to read it like you do, Brian, and I do think that the 3 most interesting words of that interview were not, I'm sorry,
You're right.
but I was burned.
Yes.
We've been making note of that.
Yes,
this morning,
I was burned. I was burned.
Yeah.
I mean, not the country. He eventually corrected himself and came back around and said, the country was burned. But I was burned by this website. It was just an interesting introspection into his thinking about how this rollout has gone.
Bret Baier, your fabulous Fox News studios there are just off Capitol Hill, and I'm sure within the corridors of the Capitol they're going to be talking about this all day and all weekend. We had Fred Upton, good Michigander, representative from Michigan here earlier today, and he talked about his bill, which is the if you like your health care, you can keep it bill that he's going to push through the House. What do you think of the Republicans' play here in terms of trying to put what really will only result to be Band-Aids on the Obamacare problem? Is that the right way for them to go politically? Do they have to look like they're doing something to try to fix it? Or should they listen to those within the party and many pundits that you talk to there at the Fox All-Stars that say, hey, Democrats own it, they should just put their hands up and watch it crash and burn?
Yeah. I think it's a great strategic question because I've talked to a number of Democrats and a number of Republicans. And last night I had a conversation with a senior Republican who said that they are going to put some delay on the table, but extract more than that. Like, try to change the law substantively. And that means whatever, you go across state lines, court reform, some substantive change to the law if they are going to agree to a delay.
Many of the health care reforms that Republicans tried to get into the Affordable Care Act back when it was first put through.
Exactly. And because, listen, they do the numbers, they do the math on you can't bring the whole thing down unless it brings itself down, and that's a possibility. But in the meantime, Republicans, I think, sense they have to be doing something to try to improve things. And eventually you're going to get to the point where people are going to turn around and say, okay, fine, it doesn't work. What do you have?
All right, Bret Baier, thanks so much for joining us. It's always great to have